Okay, in this last video, I'm going to, again, kind of pull off of the pseudocode that we did, that I gave in my example before, where the pseudocode was for a program that needed a object of type grocery item. And so I'm going to create a class called grocery item that represents an object of type grocery item. And then I'm going to demonstrate how to use that class. Again, something not so different than what you're doing. Let's see. So here I'm entering into NetBeans, and NetBeans, again, always opens up to where I was previously. I'm going to put this in a different project. I don't like to put all my files unless they're totally related in the same project. This is a new project for me. So I'm going to say Java application. Next. And I'm just going to call this project groceries. Okay. And so NetBeans will create a new project for me. And again, what NetBeans wants me to do is type code for my program right here. Okay. Again, each video that I give you assumes that you watched the one previous, so I'm not repeating a lot of explanations. Okay, now the thing is, in this particular program, what I want to do is create a class called grocery item. Okay, and then I want to try to create an object from that class, which you remember from last week's reading. So I need to add something new to my project. I don't really need this grocery item.java file. I need, which is from my other project. I want a new project, I want to say file, new file. And now my file, let's see. Okay, please wait. I'm waiting. Okay, my file is a Java class. Okay, it's a class. Then I'm gonna define a class, then use it to create objects. So here's the class. And what name do I want to call it? I'm gonna call it grosh item. Okay, and this will enable me to create grosh item objects. So now right away, Java has opened up a new file for me. Okay, grossitem.java. And this is the file in which I'm going to put my class definition. I'm going to define a class in this particular file, and then after I have my class defined properly, then I can go back to my groceries.java. I can go back to this one and use and create objects from that class. So let's go right here. And again, this is not that different from classes you're going to be creating for your final project, your ingredient class and your recipe class and stuff. You're going to be creating a number of classes as well. So first of all, class describes an object. This particular class is going to describe a grocery item. And so the attributes of a class have to be described using instance variables. So a grocery item has three attributes. It has a name. Let's see. Or maybe four. A name, a quantity, a price, and a total price. How many of each grocery item I want. So for name, I'm going to declare an instance variable, private string, item name. Okay, and again, what I'm doing when I declare a variable like this is I'm defining a variable that each object will have. Okay, so when I create a grocery item object, or I create a number, say I create 3 grocery item objects, each one will have its own item name variable. and I say private int quantity, item quantity, let's do that. Okay, again, what I'm doing is declaring a variable that each object of type grocery item will have. And the same thing for price. And I guess I could call it item price to be specific. You always want to pick a name that's as specific as possible. And then my object is also going to store the total cost of the item. So I'll declare another instance variable like that. Now, we're using the word private there because, well, you've probably done all the reading about objects, and you know that the data that's stored inside of an object should be private to that object and should only be accessible through set or get methods. And so what I've done so far is I've said that when a grocery item object is created, each time one is created, it will have its own name, quantity, price, and total inside of it. It can store its own copy of its own name, quantity, price, and total. And so those are my instance variables. They're called instance variables because they're variables that each occurrence of the object will have. Every time I create a new grocery item, every time I create a new instance, it will have its own copy of these variables. Okay, so now what do I need? Well, I need a way to create a grocery item. So I need some methods. First off, I need a method that's a constructor. A constructor is a method that's called to create an object. So when I create a grocery item object, I need to have a constructor for that that can help me create that object. And what a constructor's job is to initialize, to give initial values to all the instance variables. So my constructor is going to be provided with three parameters. It's going to be provided with a name. It's going to be provided with a price. It's going to be provided with a quantity. Okay, so when an object of type, what this is saying is when a grocery item is created, a name must be provided for it, a price must be provided for it, and a quantity must be provided. Okay, and what this constructor method does is it takes the name that was provided and stores it in the instance variable for the new object. It takes the price that was provided and stores that in the instance variable, the new item price for that new object, and it takes the quantity and that was provided and stores it in the item quantity for that particular object. So again, each object that I create has these four variables. When the object is created, this method is called, these three things are provided, these three variables, they're called parameters. These three parameter variables have values stored in them, and the value that's stored in name is going to be used to initialize the item name of the grocery item. Price is going to be used to initialize the price, and quant is going to be used to initialize the quantity. Okay, and this is my constructor method. It's used when I want to when a grocery item object is being created. Something else that we usually do for each one of the instance variables in a object is provide set and get methods. Now remember, each one of these is declared as private. that means a main program that creates a grocery item cannot change its contents and cannot view its contents because they're private. So I need to create set and get methods. So I would do what I'm doing here. I would do actually for each one of the variables. I'm only going to do it for one of them. I'll do it for the quantity. But I'm going to want a variable, a method that can be called if I want to change the quantity inside of an object. Okay, so I'll write a method called setQuantity. This method would take one parameter, quantity. Okay, so when this method's called, a quantity would be provided, and how this quantity is used, it's used to update the the variable inside of the object. So basically, I have in my main program, and we'll demonstrate this in a minute. If my main program has a grocery item, I can change the quantity inside of it by using this method. That's what it has been. What that method is for. The same idea here. If outside of the object there's a need to access the quantity that's stored in the object, I'm going to need a get quantity method. Okay, so I have a method called get quantity. This takes no parameters because nothing needs to be provided. No information needs to be provided when this particular method's being called, and this method's job is to just return the quantity that's inside of the object. So that's what it does. It returns the quantity inside that object. So I would want to have a set and a get for each of these variables. Okay, I'm not going to take the time to do that here. They're it's pretty standard setup. A set always takes a parameter of the type of the variable, and changes the value of that instance variable. And the get always has a return type of the type of the variable. So quantities and ints, the return type would be int, and what its job is to return the value of that instance variable. Okay, so I would have three more sets and 3 more gets, so that each variable would have one. I'm also going to create one more method. In this example, I'm going to call it, let's see, I'm going to call it add grocery item. Okay, and let's see, I don't think this one particularly needs to take any parameters. Now this particular method isn't going to take any parameters, and what it's going to do, its job is going to be to create a grocery item. So maybe a better name would have been create grocery item, but I'm using the name add to sort of so it goes along with your project, because I believe there's an add ingredient, and this is sort of like that. So the add grocery item's job, when this method's called, what it's going to do is produce a grocery item object that's fully loaded. By fully loaded, I mean all of its 4 variables have values in them. Okay. So the return type on this method then would be grocery item, because that's the type. That's what it's returning. Okay. So add grocery item doesn't take any information when it's called, and it returns a brand new grocery item. Okay. Now, what I want to do in this particular method, let's see, I'm going to make sure I have my little brackets lined up here. Okay, there we go. What I'm going to want to do in here, oh, I forgot a close bracket up here. That's why each method has a start, open and close bracket. So I wanted to make sure. I'm seeing these little red marks, so I'm looking to see where I'm missing some brackets or not. Let's see, I have this initial bracket for my class, and I'm going to have one at the end that matches that. Okay, let's see, and okay. And then I want to make sure that each method has a beginning bracket and an end bracket. Again, I know you read about all the syntax in Module 2, so I'm not going over all the syntax. Okay, so right now, the compiler, I'm just getting this error because I haven't put anything in here yet. And again, what the job of this method is going to be when it's called is to create a new grocery item and return it. Create a new grocery item object and return it. So, let's see. So, I will, well, where am I going to get the information to put in the grocery item? I'm going to get it from the user. Okay, so I actually have some code somewhere, if I can, I'm not sure. Well, I'll just rewrite it. Actually, this is the code that's going to go in here asking the user for those 3 pieces of information is similar to what I kind of wrote in the last demo, where I just asked the user for information and stored it. So I'm going to have the user, provide a name, a quantity, and a price for my grocery items. And so let's just do the same kind of thing as I did before. I'm going to ask the user for a name. I'm going to ask the user for a quantity. I'm going to ask the user for a price. So I need variables to store those in. I'm also going to have to calculate a total price. And I probably should put initial values in these numerical things like we did before. Okay, so I'm going to ask the user for all this stuff. And then what am I going to do? Let's see. Well, let's just go ahead and do it. Item name. I guess I could have been smart and cut and paste or grabbed some of this stuff, some of this code off the other program, although it's not going to be exactly the same, but it'll be pretty close. So I'm going to ask for a name, and then I'm going to have to read it, right? So I'm going to need I'm reading a string. So I'm going to have to use in.next like I did again in the previous video. Again, here I'm just recreating code that we went through in the previous video. Now notice, I just said in.next. Now notice, here I'm assuming that in is a scanner, and I'm saying next to get the string that the user is typing, and I'm getting a red squiggly line. Why would that be? Why would that be? Well, what didn't I do? I didn't create a scanner. I don't have a scanner. If I'm going to say in.next, I have to create a scanner. So and if I'm going to create a scanner, I have to have imported, right? I have to have imported, as we did in the previous video, java.util.scanner. Okay, so now I have my scanner. I can get my item name. I can get my quantity. And I'm just typing this quick because, again, we already talked about all this stuff. And get a price. In dot, and you remember how do we read a float from the screen? We say next float from the keyboard. Okay, so now everything, I'm kind of again recreating the scenario we had previously, and you see the red squiggly line. So you tell me what's wrong with that. Quantity, and it says, well, can't find the symbol. I don't know what this quantity thing is. Well, gee, why don't you know what it is? I declared it up there. Oh, I didn't call it quantity up there. I called it quant. Okay. Now, So now I have the three pieces of information that I need really to create a object. So I can go on to create the object. If I want to create an object, okay, I need to declare a variable of that type. So I'll declare a variable called new obj of type grocery item. And now to create the object, I just say new, and I call my constructor. When I say new followed by the name of a class, I'm calling the constructor. So I'm actually calling that constructor that's above here. And what do I want to pass in? I wanted to pass in, well, the constructor expects to be given a name, a price, and a quantity. So I'm going to provide the name that I got, the price that I got, and the quantity that I got. And now new obj is a new object of type price. Of type gross item. So I've created one using the information that the user gave me. Let's see oh my goodness, okay. I'm trying to keep this video short and I'm going fast, but let's see, what's this? Here I have an error. What can this be? I'm trying to read in a quantity and I'm saying in.next. And the error message that I'm getting is, oops, incompatible types. A string cannot be converted to an int. So what does that mean? Well, you remember from the previous line, in.next reads whatever string that you're providing and we're storing it in a variable name. Well, here I'm grabbing a string, a bunch of characters that the user provides, and I'm storing it in a variable. Does that make sense? No, because quant is declared to store a int, not a string, and I'm saying give me the next string and put it in there. That's why I'm getting that error message. And again, if you remember from the previous example, we need to read an int by saying next int. So now I have my name, my quantity, my price, and I have this new object that was created. This variable new obj, which is storing the new grocery item that was just created. And now what was this method supposed to do? It was supposed to get information from the user, which it did, and it was supposed to return the new grocery item. Okay, well I have the new grocery item pretty much all set. Oh my goodness, I didn't happen to set the total price. Well, if I had, let's see, I haven't calculated the total price yet. I did declare a variable for that, so let's calculate it. So the total price would be the quantity times the price. So now I have the total price. So now if I had a method, I haven't written it yet, but if I had a set total price method, just like I have a set quantity method, if I had a set total price method, I could pass in that total, I could provide that total price value that I just calculated, and it will change the price inside of the object. So my new object would be all set. I would have created the new object with the name, the price, and the quantity. I would have set the total price variable by calling this method, and now my object is all set and ready to return. So I can just return new obj, and I'm all set. Let's see, do I have okay, and I'm getting a little error here when I say set total price because I actually didn't declare that method. Remember I told you I was leaving that, and we would do that later, or you could do that later. So, but if I did have that method, I wouldn't have that little red mark there, okay? And so now this is my class. This is my full class, or it would be my full class if I had the additional sets and gets. Now what do I do with a class like this? Well, in my main program, and actually I might have to create that. I'm going to come back here. I might have to create, so I can run it for you, the set total price method. Otherwise, it's not going to work. let's see, a set method always returns nothing, so it's void. Set total price, it's going to take a float. And what's it going to do with this value? It's going to initialize total price. Let's see, what did I call that variable? I called the item total, sorry. I called the item total. So I guess I probably want to call this method. I probably want to call this method set item total to be clearer. And then I probably want to call it that way too, set item total, sorry. Okay, so now I have a method, set item total, that when it's called, a float value will be given, and what it does with that float value is it assigns that float value to the variable item total, the item total for the particular object that's being worked with. And so in this case, I just created a new object, and I calculated the total price, and then I called set item total to store that inside the object, and I'm returning the new object. Okay. And so now everything should be nice. Let me see if I want to test this, see what it says. I'm not sure what it'll say with a class, because it's not actually executable, but see if I get any errors. Well, it said build successful, so actually it can't execute because I've just defined a class, but a class can't execute by itself. You have to use it to create an object, but I didn't get any errors on it. So I've created the class. Again, this is a class very similar to the ingredient class that you're going to be working with. Mine just happens to be an item, a grocery item. And now I'm going to go back to my main program here. Okay, and what do I want to do? I want to create a grocery item object. So if I'm going to do that, let's see, what do I want to call it? I'll call it item 1. If I want to create a grocery item object, I have to declare a variable of type grocery item. And then I would have to assign something to that. To actually create the object, I say new grocery item. And here's another way I can create a grocery item. I can just, let's see, when I create a grocery item, I have to give a name. Beans and a price. And a quantity. Okay. And so now I actually have a grocery item. And then I can use that if I want to create a second grocery item. I can just say item 1.add grocery item. And that will cause my method to execute. So here, when I say new grocery item, I'm calling this constructor to create a grocery item for me. Okay, and that's what that does. And it fills in all the variables for that grocery item. And then when I say, call this add grocery item, I'm calling this method to execute and create a new grocery item and return it. And actually, if this is returning a new grocery item, I better have a grocery item variable to store it in. So I'm actually going to declare a second one. So what we've seen is the creation of a class in two different ways to create objects. This one creates an object stored in item 1 just by calling the constructor, and this statement creates another grocery item. It's being stored in item 2, and this one's being created by calling the add grocery item. Okay, let's see. Let me see if I can run this. Okay, so see right here, enter item name. Where we are, we're actually in the add grocery item method. It's asking for the item name. And I didn't actually put any output in this statement, so we're not going to see anything. Asking for the quantity and asking for the price. And so everything that we have here works successfully so far. So the idea is, that the program that's in video 2 actually could have helped quite a lot in coding this class, because even though I recreated the code, it's really the same thing. I declared some variables here within my method, asked the user for input, and just used the values that I had input or calculated to create a new object and return it. So again, just getting you started here, and seeing the direction for your ingredient class. And again, in Module 2, it's a good time to start working on that ingredient class, and submitting something for that, so that you won't get to the end of the semester or the end of the term and suddenly have this whole project to write. If each week, when there's a stepping stone, you use that stepping stone to add on to the project and do that piece, then when you're all done, the last week, there won't be that much left to do for your final project.